What up, you two? Flan Speaks back for another video. And just like last week when Dak Prescott, after beating up one of them teams he beat up, I think it was the Giants, was talked about in the MVP voting. This week, after the Philadelphia Eagles defeated what was considered the best team in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, the champs, now Jalen Hurts is the front runner in the MVP discussion, and Skip Bayless, Richard Sherman, and Keyshawn Johnson debate about it. I wanted to chime in on this discussion because I think it's a very important one. All right.
Please listen to this. Last night, Jalen Hurts won his 13th straight game against winning teams. That's the most ever for a quarterback since 1950. Breaking the tie at 12 straight with Peyton Manning and a guy Keyshawn played with and for, Vinny Testaverde. Jalen is now the MVP favorite. So, Keyshawn, you first, please. Did he take the MVP lead last night?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say he took the lead. I think he's, in my eyes, right there with Lamar. And the reason is because Lamar has had better statistical games. He's had some wild popping moments. But Jalen Hurts is right.
Lamar, that's an interesting name in this discussion. I never thought about that. But from what I understand, I think Hurts has better overall numbers, and of course, more wins.
Right there. I mean, when I look at Jalen Hurts' opportunity to get through this gauntlet that he's about to go through, and if he could do that, then clearly he gets in front of Lamar, right? I mean, that's just, he's got one loss on the season, but I think their schedule is such that
unless we lose them all,
they beat Kansas City. They got Buffalo, San Francisco. They got the Cowboys, Seattle. So if he can get through that a little bit, even if there was a loss somewhere in there, you still got to say to yourself, okay. And then when I look at past MVPs, and in particular come to mind is Cam Newton's MVP in 2015, for instance. Now, Cam Newton's team went to the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts has already taken his team to a Super Bowl. This would be a second potential Super Bowl appearance. But if you go back and you look at compare Jalen's 2015 to Hurts' 2015 to right now, and you look at through 11 weeks, Cam was 10-0, Jalen's 9-1. Passing yards per game, Cam was 228, Jalen's 250. Passing TDs, Cam 20, Jalen 15. Rushing yards are pretty much even at 38. And then rushing touchdowns, Jalen Hurts is up 9-6. So if I could...
That's a good comp. At a certain point in the conversation, I'm going to go back to Cam Newton's 2015 season, but that'll be a little bit later.
Just compare them through 11 weeks and then do the math on what Cam finished with and what Jalen could potentially finish with. And on top of that, get his team to a second Super Bowl. He's going to probably win the MVP.
Wow. Yeah, I don't see it, and I don't see how he's the favorite right now. They're an incredibly talented team.
Because they're 9-1, Richard.
As most teams are when you have a quarterback and you're talking about an MVP conversation. But the 15-9 touchdown to interception ratio, there's only 2,400 yards. He was 14 for 22 in this game for only 150 yards. You would have to have, when guys have MVP seasons, like you're talking about Cam Newton had, it looked like it. And we talk about the 9 touchdowns, but most of those touchdowns, probably 7 or 8 of them, were from the 1 or 2 and their tush pushes, which is fine. This one right here was a 10-yard run where he got his team in the end zone.
All right, now let me take this apart. I'm thinking Richard showed up early. They must have handed him the paper and just said, hey, you have to take the negative part of this argument because this was very weak. He first starts off with trying to say that Jalen Hurts has a bunch of help. Basically, that's his argument. Then he says, well, just as most people do when it comes to MVP. So you just picked yourself apart. You just took apart your own argument there, sir. Then now he's trying to say that usually when they get it, Cam Newton's, it looked like it. What does that mean, looked like it? That's completely subjective. What's beauty to one person is ugly to the next person, so on and so forth. That was weak. Then the third part, I guess he's trying to go through stats now. He tried to say the tush push. A lot of his touchdowns are those. Okay, but you don't have a problem with, Patrick Mahomes going in the shotgun from the 1 and throwing a touchdown there. You're just going to say it's a touchdown. I got you.
Nothing against Jalen Hurts. He's doing the things necessary to help his team win ball games. Maybe it's not all on his back. Maybe it's DeAndre Swift one day. Maybe it's A.J. Brown another day. Maybe it's Devontae Smith another day. But when you talk about the other quarterbacks in this league, it's dependent on their performance, whether the team wins or loses. So if Lamar Jackson has an off day where he turns the ball over a lot and doesn't play well, his team will probably lose that game. But you talk about that.
That's not true. Baltimore Ravens have one of the best running attacks in the league. He's tripping.
Touchdown to interception ratio, Brock Purdy has better. Russell Wilson has better. There are a number of quarterbacks. I mean, we're even talking about C.J. Stroud has a better touchdown to interception ratio, has 2,900 yards.
I get it. So you think that these voters, who are media members, you think they're looking at touchdown to interception ratio. All right, let me break this down to Mr. Richard Sherman because he must not understand how the MVP works. Okay, MVP voting is not a vote that is carried by the coaches of the league. It's not voted by analysts. It's not voted by fans. It's not voted by coaches. It's not voted by players. Okay, the voters for MVP are members of the media who have a close relationship with sports. You have to understand, you have sports, and you have sports media. Sports media's job is to drive interest into the game, to get people to watch so that companies will want to invest, and this drives up revenue. That's the way it works. Okay, so what happens is these media members have to watch the sport, and they have to write about the biggest stories. Typically, the biggest stories will be a guy who has a ridiculous statistical year, like Patrick Mahomes' first year starting, 5,000 yards passing, 50 yards, and also best record in the conference. Hey, that works out. Easy guy to pick. Unanimous choice. Boom. All right. Or you go with Cam Newton in 2015, I believe it was, where the team starts off 10-0. You might want to write about the Dallas Cowboys. You might want to write about the 49ers. You might want to write about the New York Giants, places that have a larger fan bases and so on. However, because the Carolina Panthers are winning week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, automatically the narrative becomes, okay, when will this team lose first? Will this team go undefeated the whole season? Will this team beat the Dolphins' record of 13-0? Will this team win the Super Bowl? See, what happens is because of what happens, the media members are now forced to write about it. Okay? And then they have to look at who's the most important person on that particular team, which happened to be Cam Newton. Okay? Stats are going to be secondary in a situation like that because this person is driving interest. Most valuable player is not the most valuable player for your specific team. Let me say that again. Most valuable player is not the most valuable player for the team. What it is, he is the most valuable player in the National Football League. For the National Football League, this is the person that is driving the narrative of the season. So that we understand that, this is why Jalen Hurts is first in the MVP race. So he needs to understand that. He and Patrick Mahomes met up last night for the highest rated game, highest rated, most watched game of the season, okay? And actually, I heard it was the most watched game in the last 20 years or something like that I just read. That's what it's about. Whoever was going to win that game was going to end up being the MVP leader. Am I clear? All right, now let's continue.
On the season. So when you talk about other guys like that who have had MVP moments where you can point to it and say, this guy won this game for him. This guy had a huge game. He had 4, 5 passing touchdowns, 400 yards in that game with some receivers that you cannot name. Then you talk about a guy who has elevated his teammates. When you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, you talk about one of the best receivers.
If it was about that, sure, but it's not.
In the National Football League. Probably argue.
Had it been about that, Jalen Hurts should have won MVP 2 years ago when he had a rookie Devontae Smith. He had Jalen Reagor. He had Quez Watkins. He had a new Jordan Mailata who nobody knows if he could play. You had a new coach, new defense, and somehow you started off 2-6, and then you ended up going to the playoffs. Then he should have won it if that's what we're looking at. Okay, how much can this guy do versus whether or not he has help or not.
One of the best tandem of receivers in the National Football League, one of the best offensive lines.
I love when people say that. A.J. Brown came and made Jalen Hurts. Well, how did A.J. Brown look in Tennessee? Was he considered a top 20 wide receiver in the league? No. Was he considered a top 30? Maybe. All right, underran it. If Jalen Hurts is nothing but a glorified Ryan Tannehill, then A.J. Brown should have done for Ryan Tannehill what he's supposedly doing for Jalen Hurts, right? No. Jalen Hurts does benefit from the presence of A.J. Brown, but also A.J. Brown benefits from the presence of Jalen Hurts. Don't tell me these passes that he's giving them aren't great passes. Don't tell me that their connection isn't a result of putting in long hours, working together, and building chemistry. All right, don't give me that A.J. Brown came and Devontae Smith came and all of a sudden because they're just there that magically he has all these numbers. No, it's a combination of both. Stop it.
National Football League, a pretty good running back in DeAndre Swift. They had Dallas Goedert before he got hurt. So you can't just sit there and say, this is all on.
I don't mean to pick this apart constantly and keep stopping, but his points are so bad. His argument is so awful. Okay? Peyton Manning won the MVP. When he won it, he had Reggie Wayne. He had Marvin Harrison. He had Dallas Clark. He had Edgerrin James. Didn't stop him from winning MVP. When Joe Montana won MVP, he had Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Roger Craig, Tom Rathman, right? Doesn't stop him from winning MVP. When Emmitt Smith won MVP, he had the best offensive line in the league. We don't say you don't win MVP because you have to do it with a horrible offensive line. It just doesn't work that way. When Kurt Warner won MVP in 1999, he had Marshall Faulk, Hall of Fame running back, 2 wide receivers that should be in the Hall of Fame in Holton Bruce. He had the best offensive line in the league. Didn't stop him from winning MVP. So that's not how it works, sir. What matters is that year, Kurt Warner was the best story because he comes from out of nowhere, from a guy bagging groceries to being the quarterback and leading what was known as the greatest show on turf. This became the team that drove the most interest that year, and because he was the leader of that team who came from obscurity, that's why he won it. He wasn't necessarily better than Peyton Manning. He definitely wasn't better. Well, he better than Tom Brady maybe at the time. He wasn't even really better than Donovan McNabb, honestly. Okay? But he came from obscurity, and he became the story of the year. And remember, this is a media award. Look it up if you don't know that, people.
Jalen Hurts, and he's the MVP of the league because he is playing really well, and he's playing through injury, but I just don't see him winning it over those other guys.
Yeah, he's going to look.
C.J. Stroud. Okay. Come on, buddy.
If it came down to him and Lamar, I don't. You say about other guys, well, you could point to every guy who's won the MVP had other people around him. I mean, that's the reality of it. Brock Purdy got Christian McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk making plays for him. He got also a hell of a defense. So when you talk about that, for instance, Richard, you got to look at Jalen Hurts. You say, well, they're at the 1 yard line and they're push tushes. That's hard to do. Nobody's been able to stop it.
It also comes from the fact that I don't even want to spend a whole lot of time defending Jalen Hurts because his numbers are good enough. He has 68. He completes almost 70% of his passes, 68.5. He has 15 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns for 20 touchdowns altogether, 94.8 quarterback rating, 2,497 yards, and his team is sitting at 9-1, the best record in the league. And he also defeated the best that they've sent at him, okay? So, I mean, his story, the numbers are good enough. They're there. You don't have to have better numbers than everyone else. The main number is going to be that 9-1 record and the fact that they are carrying the league right now. They're the biggest story. Can they get back to the Super Bowl?
Nobody's been able to. It's hard to do, no matter who you are at the quarterback position. Then you say signature plays that have won games. Dropping that ball in to Devontae Smith, that's a signature play, man. Picking up that draw and running it in from the 10-yard line, that's a big moment in this game.
So dropping that That pass over to Ron Bland, the new greatest cornerback of all time, the new Deion Sanders, dropping that right over him is a signature play. I'll add for you Cowboy fans.
When you look at those sort of things over a course of a season, he may not have 5,000 yards passing. That's okay. He's going to have enough yards passing, enough touchdowns. He's 9-1. And if he gets through that gauntlet, like I said, of teams, Richard, think about this. He done already went on the road to beat Kansas City. He's got Buffalo at home, San Francisco at home. If he can knock them pins down, then he goes to the Cowboys. He knocked that down. Seattle knocked that down. Or maybe he loses one of those games somewhere in there. That's a gauntlet.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to win all that. My God.
To go through. And he may not have 500 yards throwing in any of those games. He may not have 300 yards throwing in any of those games.
I'll say this about Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts will get as many yards as necessary to win the game. That's what they don't get, right? If it's a situation where it's a shootout and he's going at it with any of those teams, he has shown he'll keep scoring. He showed you that in the Super Bowl last year. He'll keep scoring. We can do this, right? Typically, teams and guys with all those yards are either doing one or two things. I say this almost every week. They're either in a shootout, so that's why they got 400 or 500 yards, which is the type of football I don't want to see. It ticks me off. Or they're a team that's running the score up, like the Dallas Cowboys. That's what they like to do. They like to run up the scores. They like to run up stats. Those are the types of things they like to do.
As long as they win, and he's the guy driving the ship, I promise you, he's going to be seriously contentious.
That's not how it works, because that's literally the argument against Brock Purdy.
But Brock Purdy doesn't have the same momentum as Jalen Hurts. It's all about the
and Brock Purdy has 3 straight losses.
Momentum. And he has momentum from the voters, Skip. The people, that's why he's right now the leader on the odds makers. It's not me saying it. It's them saying it.
He's the leader because he's the quarterback of the team with the best record. That's why he has it, not because he's statistically.
Yeah, well, he's still the leader. What's it matter? All it's doing is disproving your argument, Richard. You're not making any sense, sir.
Not anything crazy. It's because he has the best record.
I didn't say statistics. We're not talking about statistics, though, Richard. We're talking about if he can win it.
Then we're not talking about MVP.
Yeah. That's not true, though.
Yeah, just real quick, just to go to kind of strengthen what Keyshawn is saying. When Cam Newton won the MVP in 2015, he was 16th in the league in yards, came from 3,837. The leader in yardage that year was Drew Brees, who had 4,870 yards, over 1,000 more yards than the MVP winner. Cam Newton completed 59.8% of his passes. That's under 60%, which would be considered unacceptable. 35 touchdowns, which is good. 10 interceptions, which is good, for a 99.4 rating. But no one will look at those numbers and say those are MVP-type numbers. The MVP-type numbers came in with a 13-3 record and a 10-0 start. When you start off 10-0, you dominate the headlines, and that's why he won MVP. Tom Brady in 2004 completed 60.8% of his passes, which would be considered less than standard, for 3,692 yards, 28 touchdowns, a whopping 14 interceptions. Not a good ratio. However, Tom Brady was MVP because his team was 14-2. You understand what I'm getting at here, people? You know, Richard is wrong.
Because Josh Allen got a lot of statistics, but he ain't gonna win no damn MVP because his team is not 9-1.
Right, and so you either have both or you have neither. So in order to win it, you still have to have the best record, but you have to have the statistics along with it. If he does not have the statistics, they will not give him the award. I can hear you argue all day.
Then why is the leader right now? Why is he the favorite, sir?
He will have the statistics at the end of the day. It may not be 5,000 yards. It may be 4,200, or it may be 3,900 with another 600 on the ground, with another 15 touchdowns. That's how they're going to look at it.
Look, let me put Jalen Hurts.
Skip's argument to not make this video too long is that Jalen Hurts should be. He goes through this whole soliloquy about he hates the Eagles, but he loves Jalen Hurts and so on. I think I'm not going to go too far into Skip's argument because it's not really necessary. So I'm going to end the video there. And if you guys want to check it out, you can look up the original video. I will keep the link underneath, for you to do so. All right.